Let me begin by introducing myself. Again, many of you I can see on the list, names are familiar, but my name is Eric Bloom. I'm the Executive Director of the IT Management and Leadership Institute. Our claim to fame, that being the Institute's, not mine, is that we're the governing body for 2 certifications in IT management. By some of the names here, I see that actually some people hold one of these 2 certifications, either this one, the IT Management and Leadership Professional, which is designed for people who are senior individual contributors, or let me say soon to be managers, to those with up to about 3 or 4, maybe 5 years of IT management experience. For those looking to move up the IT management chain, there's the ITMLE, or the IT Management and Leadership Executive, which, as you see by looking at the topics here, is designed by those already in or moving toward more senior positions within IT. One more thing, and then it's all material, I promise, from here to the end, is that I'm very proud to say that in, I think it was November, is CIO.com recognized these certifications among the top 10 IT leadership programs within the United States. So anyway, is that I just wanted to throw that in because I'm very proud of it. And for those of you who have one of these, it certainly raises the stature for you also as a participant. But as promised, this was the only slide relating, well, me and us. Why don't we get directly to material? And again, welcome to all who have joined us. When I think of management, particularly in a virtual world, is that managing people virtually is like regular management best practices on steroids. But what I mean by that it's on steroids is the concepts are the same, but you must be more strategic, tactical, and deliberate in their execution. Why? Because you can't see people sitting across from you. Someone can't be just raising their hand as you're walking by their cube or their office and say, hey, Eric, do you have a minute? Oh, sure thing. Certainly they can call you, but everything is a little bit more disjointed in this virtual world that we have. In fact, when we think of managing virtually in general, there are a number of challenges that come with it. The first of which is minimizing team member isolation. And by the way, in these first 2 or 3 slides, what I'm going to be doing from here for these next 2 or 3 slides coming up is I'm going to be talking about the issues, just sort of say setting the mood and setting the stage, so to speak. But as I do that, it's just knowing what these issues are in themselves can be of value to you. The reason being is that maybe someone looked at this first bullet point and said, yeah, you know what? The people on our team, I bet they are feeling a little isolated, particularly Joe. And by the way, I'm looking, not that I can see here, I don't see anyone named Joe. If there is, know that I'm not picking on you, I'm just picking on a name. But anyone might say, you know what, maybe I'll give Joe a call. I haven't heard from him for a bit. Does great work, but I just want to make sure he's doing okay. So the mere fact that you see these challenges, either for you as the leader or for those on your team, that in itself can provide you some value as we get into more of the solutions. But anyway, this team member isolation, by now they've been working home, practically a year. And as a result of that is that even though they may have felt part of the team before, maybe they don't really right now. The next is building trust, particularly if you've hired additional people who are working virtual. They've never physically been together, able to shake each other's hands, so to speak. But building trust when everyone is in a work from home environment, or just you're working in different groups. So your people may be back in the office at some point, God willing, but you'll have 5 people in Boston, 5 people in LA, 5 in Detroit, 15 in New York City. How do you build trust within, across the teams as well as within the individuals themselves? Building team cohesion. In other words, getting the team to feel like a team, not just a group of individuals, each performing their own tasks. The next is that if you can't observe the people who are working for you, how can you best assess their ability to perform the task, their contribution to the overall team and sort of the group effort, let me say, in moving towards your department's work that needs to be done, and assessing their individual work performance. A lot of people have done this. For example, how I grew up doing this within the management ranks was through observation, through asking others, through seeing things that are done. I need to change the way that I have to do that now because I can't see the work that's performed. I have to either see the output of the work, or I need to speak to people who have had direct connections and work directly with those on my team. The next is defining effective processes. So what I mean by this is I'm going to just pick on one of the names here. I'll pick on Martha. Let's say Martha and I work together. And we've been assigned by our boss, Ira, that we have 3 tasks to perform. So in which case, let's say I'm doing one of them and Martha is doing one of them. Well, obviously, one task in the middle is being missed. Things are falling through the cracks. What's the other side of that coin? Martha's working on 2 of them, and I'm working on 2 of them. So as a result, there's a redundance of effort here, which, assuming that Martha does a better job on it than Ira, our boss, will have to come to me and say, hey, Eric, sorry to say it, but, Martha's been working on this also. She's doing a better job. Why don't you just give her what you're done and let her do it? Which, again, hurts productivity. But what it really also does is causes a major fragmentation of work. So as a result of that, I'll feel maybe a little insulted that I didn't do as well as someone else on the team. I may feel just demotivated because here I worked really hard on this and it's gone to naught. So all of these things, if you think about them, is they're the types of tasks that are the types of, let me say, challenges that we as managers, when everyone is co-located, and by co-located, I just mean together in one place, these are standard challenges that we all have as managers all the time, but they're exasperated virtually because we can't see how things are happening. And there's also the potential a little bit for, what's out of sight and out of mind. On the better side of this list, also there's celebrating group success. Someone on the team, say for example, Michael does something great, might be, get a new customer, this being an IT group, maybe he had a really successful install of a new application. And, what are the things that you can do, excuse me, to celebrate as a group to make that happen? Now, I'll give you a fun one if everyone's in the same time zone, is that to call a mandatory lunchtime meeting, from 12 to 1, everyone in their homes or wherever they are need to be on at that time. And then call the local Domino's Pizza near where they happen to live and have them delivered about 10 minutes to 12. Tell them to expect a package that's important for the mandatory 12 o'clock meeting. And then, of course, what is it? It's a free lunch for everyone. So then let's say, again, Michael did an awesome job on that. Everyone will be happy about it. Let's say that the next project that's going to be done will be completed by Laurie. Everyone will be pumping for Laurie. Why? Because first of all, they wanted to do well in the project. But second of all, hey, it means free pizza if it goes well. So just little things like that are much easier to do. Bring in a cake, bring in bagels and cream cheese in the morning for the office as a celebration. Just takes more diligence, more effort to be able to think of these things and roll them out. But that's from your perspective, the challenges. How about those on your team? Those in your team have been at this pretty much a year by now. So, I'm not going to talk about the introductory things. Where in their house should they be working on a daily basis, that kind of thing. Presumably, that's been long taken care of. But there are some other issues that need to be considered. The first of all is that maybe what they decided to do when they went home a number of months ago to work is they said, yeah, I love the sofa, nice place to sit, just put the laptop on my lap. And literally for the last number of months, 8, 9, 10 months, almost a year now, is basically they've been there like this, banging on their laptop. And what's happened is, because the sofa wasn't particularly ergonomic in its nature, between sitting like this, they have neck and back problems. And by going like this all day on their laptop, now they're also beginning to get carpal tunnel related issues. So just as time goes on, it exasperates the issues of non-ergonomic conditions should they be there. I know firms that have done a number of things. One that sent the drop shipped second terminals to monitors to everyone's homes so that they could have more space and increase their productivity. Others were able to come into the office and pick up their office chair. Others gave them stipends to buy their own screens and office chairs and things to be able to be more productive. Now you might say, well, yeah, we went at this a long time, but the truth is, at least in a lot of the firms that I'm speaking to, people are really talking the summer. So we still have 4 or 5 months ahead of us before people will be coming back in. And I'll talk about more on that on one of the last slides today. But next is professional growth might seem like they're being stagnant. Why? Because everybody's just at home, they're working on their stuff. It's like this temporary thing is going on and on and on. So what things can you do to assure that your employees, those working for you, feel that they can grow as managers? And we'll be talking a little bit more about that also. Lastly, I asked a friend of mine, how does he like working from home? And what he said to me, what he said to me is that he doesn't feel like he's working from home. What he feels like is that he's living at work. So this has some issues for those in your team regarding work-life balance. It's too hard. I mean, it's too easy for, whether it be us or the people on our team, after dinner to say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to go send that quick email. And then, next thing you know, you blink, you have 3 other emails. There was something else you thought you wanted to get done before the morning. Poof, it's 11 o'clock at night. Your spouse and your kids are asleep. And you lost what would have been maybe a nice evening with the family. And this can happen day after day, ongoing. Maybe even, your spouse is in a similar position working from home. And when it's not you, it's them. So anyway, people are living with not only this, but just everything else that's going on in the world right now. Maybe many of you, or certainly those on your teams, maybe working parents, with kids now that are in and out of the house, depending on if school is open or closed, if the daycare facilities are open, closed, or even still in business, and just all that stuff. Wouldn't you like to go out to a nice restaurant, and have it be full with everyone in it and so on? It's wearing on things. So these are just general, I'll refer to them as environmental challenges that those on your team are having. Now, from here, then, what do they really want? You're an employee. What are the things that you want? You can fall into the stuff that's on this next slide also, in addition to those on your team. The first thing is efficient connectivity, technical connectivity. When COVID first happened and everybody moved home, to work, it was all right, catch as catch can. All right, we can connect in this way. Gee, I have a modem, it's not too good, but I can connect into the office. At the end of the day, what your staff wants to be at home is productive. To do that is, yes, they need connectivity into the office. But a question that I'll ask you now, given we're going to be at this a few more months, and there are many companies who are deciding that for certain members of their team or their whole staff is going to be working at home permanently, is that if they were in the office, could they get to the software and the data that they need more easily? Would it be faster? Would it be more attainable? Are there other tools, like, for example, from home, they analyze data using Excel. If they were in work at the office, they would use Hyperion or Business Objects or other more, say, advanced and powerful tools. The next thing that people need is they want to have conceptual connectivity. In other words, they want to have some organizational visibility and impact. They want to feel that the work that they're doing is basically for the greater good. They know that they do this, they pass it. They do this, they pass it. They hear one thing good here, but it's like, at some point you want to say, hey, anybody up there using the stuff that I'm doing? Now, from a visibility perspective, in a work from home environment, pretty much everybody, things are in place now. Say that this was me. For me to be able to talk to my boss, we probably would have one-on-ones once a month, things along that line. But the holy grail in this whole process now is, yes, I want to have, proper connection to my boss. However, is what's really being missed in the workplace now is not me talking to my boss, but me talking to my boss's boss. In other words, is that upward visibility beyond those you directly work and report to. It used to be, is that you see your boss's boss walking down the hall and, she'd stick her head in and say, hey, how you doing? I heard you working on Project X and it's going really well. Those things really don't happen as much. And if they are, they tend to be much more orchestrated. The next is consistent workflow. There's nothing worse than sitting at home, wanting to get something done, and you don't have any projects or tasks or incoming work coming to you. So you're sort of feeling, first is just, you're feeling a little guilty that you're not earning your pay. You want to be productive. And then probably in the back of some people's minds would be, gee, I'm not really getting enough work here. I hope they still need me. So continued workflow is something that's important. We're going to be talking more about this one in a few slides in a couple of minutes. The next one is visibility to your team. In other words, those that you're working with, collaboration. Do you know that the number one leading indicator for both reduced attrition, in other words, less people leaving, and work satisfaction, it's having friends at work? And then lastly here is to the growth opportunities, which was mentioned earlier. For them, it's how do you grow the team? What can you do to cross-train people and things along that line? We'll be talking a little bit more about that one also. So now let's talk about, move specifically about talking about different types of tasks and the needs for those tasks. Basically, the concept is different types of tasks have different work implications, needs, and measurements. In effect, while this has always been true in the physical workspace, working virtually requires a higher level of planning, and there's that word again, deliberate action for to successfully overcome them. So when you think of tasks, not all tasks are created equal. They're all important, but they're very different from some key aspects. To that, let's start with this chart. The boxes within it I'll be explaining in the 4 slides, one each coming after it. But let me just talk about the axis. The axis you see across the bottom is what's at the task complexity. Now, by task complexity, sort of a low difficulty or high difficulty, understand that that's relative to the person who's doing the work. For example, you may be doing a task that's rote for you. It's really easy. It's, oh boy, another one of these. For me, never in a million years could I ever do that task. It wouldn't be highly difficult. It'd be impossibly difficult. Why? Because of your experience, your training, your professional area, etc. So understand that the horizontal axis isn't the job's easy, the job's hard. It's relative to you in that role, your ability to perform it. The vertical axis is required interaction, which is basically how often do you have to talk to other people, physically on phone as opposed to just, computer kind of thing in order to do your job. So now let's quickly look at each one of these separately from 3 key perspectives, and those being the virtual implications of that type of work, the needs that they need the people doing it, and then how can you measure them, in other words, to know that they're doing a good job. Now, by what I mean by processing, this could be processing incoming transactions of some sort. I know it's IT people here, but the typical example I like to use is from the accounting department. Incoming invoices come in for accounts payable. Someone needs to take that, process it, and move it on. Processing within an IT space could be more help desk oriented, where, say, tasks are coming in and then tasks need to be performed. But basically, you're getting work in, you're sort of heads down, doing it on your own and moving forward. The virtual implications of this is it can be really, really monotonous. Have you ever done the same task all day long? What you want to do once in a while is get up, maybe stretch a little bit, talk to, say that Randy was in the cube next to me and say, hey, Randy, boy, I don't know about you, but, I could go for a quick cup of coffee. You want to join me? I got to get my head out of that keyboard for a minute. All right. It's, from monotonous task. Also is that there's the chance of very little visibility to your manager. Why? Because we're managers. What do? We usually end up going where there are problems, to solve problems, to make decisions, to allocate work. Well, if someone is continually getting stuff in a process and they're doing a good job at it, we don't necessarily see them that much. There's no real need other than for just general management reasons to speak with them. So the needs, what do they need? They need continuous workflow, and they need the proper tools in order to properly, continuously be doing these tasks. But now how are you going to measure them? You'll have to measure them based on their the throughput. In other words, how many of these things can they get done? Now, you can't just look over the cube at their desk and say, all right, they're working hard, good thing. Now you need formalized benchmarks. How many of these are they supposed to be able to do in a day? And then what you can also test them on, or measure them on, I should say, is the quality of the work that they're doing. How good is the data input, or whatever it is, what's its work quality? Now let's move from processing over to knowledge work. With knowledge work, it's very different. The implications of knowledge work, that's someone, say, sitting down programming for half a day, developing a test plan, designing a database schema, figuring out the new security software to protect you from all the bad guys, that kind of thing. But so what do you need? You really need quiet time. Now, this being at home and being able to be heads down working on something without being interrupted by others, is that that's a pretty good place to be. At home, nobody's going to bother you, assuming you have the home environment where no one's going to bother you. But then what are their needs? The needs of people doing knowledge work is they need 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours even of just solid uninterrupted time. The reason is think of it when you do a knowledge work or perform some specific task. Now, by the way, this works not only for, say, developing your new budget for the year, but it will also work, say, if you're cleaning your garage. So here, You start by what I like to call nesting. In other words, you're saying, okay, let me see, where are those 3 emails? All right, here it is. Okay. Where are the notes from my last meeting? All right, here they are. You're getting everything together. The garage equivalent would be, all right, where's the brush? Where's the broom? Where's the paint? You know, that kind of thing. Then, so you've got all your supplies together or your information. The next is you commence work. And then as you're working, what happens is you'll naturally sort of go into the zone. You know, you might call it flow, you could call it zone, you could call it super high productivity. That's where people do their truly best work. And then as time goes forward, there'll be disengagement, you know, maybe because you're getting tired, the task is near completion, you're hungry, nature calls, you know, whatever it might be, and then disengagement to do other things. So in this case, for your knowledge workers, being able to work at home interrupted for blocks of time could be a great advantage. Now, how do you measure people that are doing this type of work? Well, first of all, it's the quality of the work that they're producing. And now it's not tied to a specific benchmark where you have to do 3 of these knowledge work things a day. That's nonsensical. But it's, are they meeting the delivery dates of where things are done? Now, what I would suggest to you also for people in processing type jobs, unless it's the kind of job where truly you can automatically get them fed work 100% of the time so they're never sitting there idle, give them a knowledge worker task. You know, the kind that doesn't have a specific deadline, but sort of they can work on during downtimes. It's a little extra value for you. It's maybe a new learning experience for them, etc. And it keeps them busy. You know, but busy, and I mean that, you know, in the most positive way, some project that you really like to get done, but processing comes first, so you can't put a deadline on this second project. The next type is now I'm up in informational. When I think of IT, informational, it could be help desk. People are calling in, they're having questions, and so on. What it could also be is if you're supporting, for example, outside customer calls coming into the website, technical support of some type. Maybe you have an internal call service desk that people would call into for password resets and that kind of thing. That's what falls under this one. The implications of it from a virtual, from the virtual implications are these can be high stress, high burnout jobs. Now, if everyone's in the office, you know, someone was yelled at, they stand up, they look over the cube and they go, hey, Peter, you wouldn't believe the call I just got. You know, oh, you got a call from the same person? Yeah, man, they call me again. You know, I know I can't hang up. It's my job, but boy, would I like to. You can't commiserate like that with the people that you're working with because you're the only one there. So you have that lack of, you know, like with processing work, but sort of the lack of proximity to others to just sort of make things happen and just, you know, break the mood a little bit. Their needs, they need great communication tools to be able to, you know, send this person to that person, to have incoming calls, probably, you know, headphones, things along that line, but just whatever would be required as if they were in the office. And also their workflow. You know, workflow in this role is when they're available. Like, for example, I think it's Dell, don't quote me on it, but I think it's them and did a great job at it, is they do what they call home shoring. So people, like if I go to call up for Dell support on, say, a computer that I have, is that people will sort of turn on when they're in and turn off when they are sort of on a screen. So that if I say, if let's say that I was a person working there, I'd say, okay, I'm ready for work. And then of course they track, so they'll know how many hours I've worked. And then when a call comes into the main area, they would route it to me. And then, you know, let's say I'm going to have lunch. I'm done for the day. I just sort of, you know, turn off my switch. It wouldn't be a physical, obviously. It'd be a press button. I probably should have gone this way instead of like that. Old habits die hard. But then they would just route them to other people. So anyway, do you have a process in place that facilitates that? How do you measure them? It could be through surveys. It could be through, you know, listening to the calls that they're making, you know, double jacking, so to speak. How many times have you called the technical support group and what they say is the call is being recorded for quality and learning purposes? This is why. It's because of this. And lastly, collaboration. I'll only spend a moment on this one, but for collaboration, basically, it's a combination of knowledge work and informational. So, you know, as you'll see, the implications then are, is the quiet time at home is great for the knowledge work you're doing related to the collaboration, but what you're really missing is the reduced hallway conversations. So let's say, for example, that Lana and I are you know, are talking about something, a particular project we're working on, and we see Chris walking down the hall. What would we do if we'd all there? We'd go, hey, Chris, yeah, Chris, you got a sec? Yeah, Laurie and I are talking about something that I think would be of value to you. So you can't do that, obviously, if everyone's in their own home. But what you could do is conference another person in and say, hey, why don't we call Chris? Maybe we'll be lucky he's home. If not, we leave him a message. But anyway, these are the implications and the change in process. So now what do you need to do is, and I won't go through all of these needs, we've sort of discussed them, but it's the combination of what people need who are doing knowledge work, but need high connectivity to other people that they're working with. How do you measure them? Obviously, the quality of their work, but also by their level of collaboration and working with other people, but also their overall contribution to the project. It's not like you have 5 people in a conference room anymore and you can see, all right, everyone's in there and they're single focused because everyone's cell phone is back at their desk. Is that you need to be able to look at that a little bit more closely. Now, we've talked a fair amount now about the tasks. Let's move away from the tasks now, and let's talk specifically about the people. Most specifically about the people, about their personality types. Now, I'm a big fan of the major personality type tests and such, or assessments, I should say, whether it be DISC or colors or predictive index, any of those that you have the opportunity to take, I would strongly suggest it. We're not going to be talking about those here, and I have no vested interest for you to take them other than I'm trying to give you a good piece of advice, because not only can you learn more about yourself, but you can learn more about how to deal with others, the people in your team, your peers, your bosses, your clients, etc. They're great to do. But what I'd like to talk about here is introversion and extroversion. For introversion, there's actually 4 types, and the 4 types. This isn't based on my research. You'll see the proper, the proper noting on the bottom. This is actually a professor from, well, here in Massachusetts, where I am, at Wellesley College. There's 4 types of introversion. Those types are social. What do you mean, like social? How do you have social and introversion? They're a social introvert. What that means is they're probably thrilled about having to work from home and not talk to anybody. They're just really just an internal person and are happy sitting at home doing what they're doing. The next type of introvert is what they call an anxious introvert. This is someone who, after they get off the phone, or more particularly after the social process happens, whether it's by phone, by video, in person, that they sit home and they ruminate and say, "Oh, I thought this went well. I hope hope people liked it. Oh boy, I said this instead of that during the meeting. I hope my boss isn't mad." So if you have someone who is like this on your team, then what a way that you could deal with it is that if you know that, say it's Friday and it's a Friday morning, it's a 1-hour meeting, and that 20 minutes into it, the person working for you just said something, and then you said, "Oh, and now consider it from this perspective also." And she said, "Oh yes, absolutely." What you might want to do is, when about 15 minutes after the phone call ends or the meeting ends, is just drop him or her a quick email. "Great job and today. Hey, sorry I had to break in for a moment. I knew you were headed there anyway. Great. Have a good weekend. Talk to you Monday. Big success in the meeting." Now, why would you take that 30 seconds to do that? Because if you know that someone in your team is going to be thinking about that 1 minute for the whole weekend, you may have saved their day, saved their weekend from them thinking about it, because that's, "Oh, I did terrible in that." Well, wait a minute. No, my boss said I did great. It's a counteracting force. The better you know your team, the better you can do these things. Someone who's thinking, this is when I always think of introvert. This is the kind of person that I have classically thought of before studying this. They're really an internal thinker. They take things to heart. They think about it, and boy, when they come up with ideas, they're well thought out. They're strategic. They're tactical. They're things you should really listen to. So what I would say as a manager, if you have people in your team like this, make sure that you listen to them. And then the 4th type is restrained. A restrained type introvert is, those people, like you say, "Oh, don't talk to Joe before 9:30 in the morning." People like that, takes a while for them to get going. Or maybe yourself, I know I'm a little bit like this, is if I go to a party, I'm a little bit more sort of, like quiet and in the back. And then as the evening goes on, I sort of, find my groove, so to speak, and then I'm talking to more people, particularly if it's a networking or a business type event where I may not know many people. So if it's someone like this, maybe you want to tell them, set up meetings back to back to back, because they're all warmed up by the middle of the first meeting. And rather than have a meeting now and a reading at 3 p.m, where they have to sort of wind back up, is that they can be more efficient in meetings in a row. Bottom line, if you have someone who meets is of these different types, and people don't fall exactly into one, it can be a combination. Think of ways to make your team successful. Just some quick advice, regarding it, and then as you might expect, we'll move to extroverted. So understand each one of your team's members' specific introverted traits, their social strengths, their challenges, and their default social actions. In other words, they never call anyone but love it when someone calls them. Whatever it might be, the more you know about them, the more that you can help them. Like if you're into servant leadership, this is a great place to be using it. Next is, schedule meetings with your staff, your manager, your peers, and others on a regular basis if you're a little bit like this. Why? Because, you ever have, talked to a friend that you haven't talked to, maybe it's an old high school buddy. And, you say, gee, we haven't talked in so long. It's great to talk to you. We should do this every month or so. You blink and it's a year later. The same thing can happen here. Someone who is not, who is introverted, for example, and isn't really, it's not really in their nature to reach out to people. Set up standardized meetings just to make sure that you're speaking to your staff is speaking to their clients, and such on an ongoing basis. The next is email, more than normal, just to maintain relationships if you don't want to be talking to them in person. And lastly, and this one sentence is the hardest thing in the entire presentation today. If you have a negative mental dialogue, or if someone on your team does, the voice in your head kind of thing, is do your best to stay positive. It's real that I understand how difficult this is to actually do it. But, try to stay positive by doing some of the things we've done here. Just as humans helping other humans, if you have someone on your team who is a little sullen by nature, contact them a little bit more often, either by email or by phone call, just to make sure that they're doing well. It's just a good thing, again, for us to do, not only as managers for our team, but just humans to humans. Now let's talk about introverted. Extroverted. Extroverted, there were also 4 types. This work was actually done by someone different, as you see in the bottom, was a psychologist. I think most of his work was done in the earlier 1900s. There's your intuitors. These are the people who basically like to come up with vision. These are the people who love to be the leaders, come up with a great idea, and then sort of use that to catapult themselves, to talk to everyone about it, to move their agenda forward. These are the change agents within your company. The sensors, in the old days, and by the old days, I mean about a year ago when you could go to Starbucks and hang out for a while, this is the kind of person who says, you know what, it's too quiet in the office. I'm going to go down to the cafeteria or go down to Starbucks and just work there. And they'll put headphones on. It's not like they're watching everyone that's going on, but the door opening and closing, people walking by, cash registers ringing. They just like that extra sensation. It just sort of, that connection to the physical world just raises their energy level. The third type are the thinkers. These are sort of like the intuitors in that they are thinking about things, but rather than big visions, what they're doing is they're doing it more from a goal-oriented or system process-oriented. How do these things connect? What can we do with it? Now, that certainly takes some quiet time, but once they get it, they're huge in rolling a lot of this stuff out. Project managers, in an interesting way, very often fall under this category. And then what I tend to think of as extroverts are the feelers. People on your team who are saying, you know what, who should I pick on here? Boy, I tell you, Mike, is that I can't wait till we're all back in the office together. Why? Because these are people. They like being around people. It gives them energy and helps them grow. So if you have these types of people working for you, certainly there's many things, but first of all, obviously note it. But the next is have them schedule video calls or phone calls at different times during the day. Why? Because they gain their energy from other people. So, if their energy is lapsing, what do? You get them on a phone call, or they make a phone call. Say from 9 to 9:30, say I'm on the call with Cindy. Let's say Cindy is high energy. So then I talk to Cindy. We're on talking about whatever the project is for 30 minutes. That sort of gives me a personal energy fix, maybe to get me till, say, 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock, I set up a meeting with Ira. I know Ira. He is very high energy. Hi, Ira. And, then from here is that, I would talk to him about some other topic, maybe a project plan that would give me the personal energy, maybe to bring me to 2 p.m, and set up something else. So as my energy wanes, as an extrovert, you gain your energy from others. So this can help you keep your level of needed energy through the business day. Next is, if they get an email in, take that as an opportunity to return an email with a phone call. But also understanding the differences, and will give you insights into the types of tasks that are best suited for the people in your team. And as an example of this, an extroverted employee living alone in a quiet environment would most likely flourish in a role that where he or she has to be on the phone all day long or on video calls all day. Imagine if you were a super extroverted person and you're living at home and it's really quiet, you live alone, you're in a building, somewhere where there's not a lot of noise, and then but 9 o'clock comes, it's Monday morning, you're up, you showered, you're ready to work, and poof, you're going to be talking to people all day long. That's a really great thing for someone who's inclined to that level of extroversion. Now, let's make one change in it, though. Let's say that this same extroverted person isn't living alone. They're living with a spouse, 5 kids under the age of 7, 3 dogs that love to bark, and they're living on a main street right near a hospital, so the ambulance sirens are going by. You probably, unless this person does have a place where they can quietly speak with others, probably, even though that would be their inclination to give them those type roles, now you have to understand their environment. At work, you can control the environment. It's quiet, it's offices, it's cubes, whatever it might be. At home, it's whatever happens to be there. So now let me switch topics on you yet one more time. And now let's talk about professional growth for yourself, certainly, but professional growth for those on your team. People want to continue to grow. Eventually, some of them may want your job, or they may want to be promoted from business analyst to senior business analyst, or, whatever it might be. And it's our job as managers to try to help facilitate the growth of people working on our team. Certainly, it's their responsibility too. It's not just us, but we certainly should be playing a certain role in helping to facilitate it. So what I would like to say here, and this will tie back to the very first slide that we spoke of, professional growth in a virtual world should parallel or expand on the activities that would be done if someone was in the same, if you were both in the same office. In other words, just because they're virtual, it's easy to have sight out of mind, forget about their growth a little bit. So what does this mean? It brings the word deliberate back in. You have to deliberately be thinking about this to bring it up in your one-on-one. Hey, what can we do to expand your skill set? Blah, blah, blah. It's just more easily passed off. So some things you can do. Certainly there's educational classes. There's our ITMLP and MLE that we mentioned earlier. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But also your other standard internal classes, technical classes, whether it be through, live through providers or things like Lynda, or through, any one of a number of awesome training companies to learn, Java, Python, database, whatever it might be. But in addition to that, other things you can do are these. Open source software. They're working on their own equipment. If there's some particular type of software or something, for example, Hadoop, I'll be talking about that one actually a few slides down from a different perspective. But if they want to learn how to use open source software, let them download it on their own machine. You don't even have to worry about it, getting inside of the firewall, your complex, because they're doing it on home equipment. Why? Because they're home. They'll have the ability to do that. Next is free cloud vendor-based sandboxes. If there's any software you're thinking of moving toward that's a cloud-based product, is that I would venture to say that, most of you are from large companies and such, is that for those of you who are, there's no cloud vendor that you could call if you're bona fidely interested in using their product isn't going to let you play with it in a sandbox area for a little while to learn about it as part of an evaluation. Use this as a way to help give your team some additional skills. Along with that is, free trial accounts, that they can get on their own, and then, you're not hurting the vendor because that's how this is set up. But also, if it's a really good product, you may in fact bring it into the office. And lastly, if you want to get really creative and a bit more techie, if anybody's familiar with Raspberry Pi, I don't mean the kind you eat for people who've never heard of it, but what those are, they're little devices. They're literally about this big, and it's actually its own little Linux box. So you could take 3 or 4 of those. They're like $35, $40 a piece, and you can put, tandem. You can put them together. You can put an old keyboard on it. Put in a big thumb drive and a monitor, and you can use it as a multi-integrated Linux platform. Then what could you do with it? You could download Hadoop. I told you I'd mention that again, which is open source through the Apache Foundation, and you could be learning how to do big data, analytics and big data manipulation right there on this little thing that probably in total costs you less than a couple of $100. So, but if you can be creative this way, people are home, maybe you don't have the training budget or whatnot, let them try stuff like this. Next thing you can do to expand their knowledge, have them look at your company's website. One thing that certainly I propose, as do most people in roles like mine, talking to IT professionals, is they say you can't just be the chief techie anymore. That if you want to truly move into IT management roles up to a CIO role, what you really need to be is a strong business executive who, by the way, can run a technology shop. That's it, is that you always hear, IT wants to have a seat at the business table. How are they going to get that table? They have to understand the business. So things you can do to expand those people in your team or your own is have them read the company's website. In other words, when was the last time you've gone to your company's website and looked at the product offerings, the testimonials that are there, all of that kind of stuff to learn about those parts of the company that you're not personally involved with. Other things you could do is read the websites of your competition. Read your company's marketing material that's available online through SharePoint and other activities. Also is that go to industry-specific websites related to your profession. I'm continually doing stuff like that. For example, I love to go to ZDNet by Ziff Davis, CIO.com, IT World. There's an unbelievable amount of knowledge or information out there that you can point your team toward, but also related to your particular industry. If you're in healthcare, if you're in financial services, in education, learn more about your industry, and then about if the people that you're developing, if you're delivering things to your clients, what are their clients using? Who are their clients? Sort of the clients of your clients. If you know that, then what does that mean? That means that you'll better understand the people that you're working with. For example, if I was an IT consultant working for Walmart, then I probably should learn a fair amount about Walmart. But who else I should know if I'm working, say, on their vendor management system? I should know the ways that they interface and things about the vendors and the issues of the vendors and how they're connecting. You could do that from industry to industry to industry. Next one is through delegation. I tended to do this for a long time. When people working virtual, I sort of always gave them the same task. I sort of, what they call them, pigeonhole them into this task or that task and always sent it there. You can facilitate employee growth in a virtual world simply by trying to find ways through delegation to enhance their skill set. Also, maybe if you have someone new to the company, give them a project where they have to talk to people in 6 or 7 different departments. Give them introductions to those 6 or 7 people, and all of a sudden, poof, they know a lot more people around the company now. Try to find ways to put them on projects to get not just to you, but to your boss or to other visibility within the company, which will make them feel good, if you remember from one of the earlier slides we had. Maybe delegate something to them that will be associated with them learning new technologies, gaining new business knowledge, or just the things that would be required to position them for promotion. So what I'd like to leave you with, now that we've talked about, all these sort of different particular techniques, concepts, is I'd like to just talk a little bit for a moment about moving back to the office. It's going to be much, much more difficult than when everyone went home. The reason is when everyone went home, is that it was legislated by, the governors in whatever state you're in, is that it just had to be that way. So people would say, I can't believe my management wants me to work at home. Probably they wanted to, but even more than that, they had to, it was the law. So coming back into the office, though, is much, much different. Many employees have made the decision, they like this working from home thing. And you know what? They want to do it permanently for the rest of their career, even if it means leaving your company to do so. Next is moving back to the office isn't being done by legal requirement. It's being done by your management team, maybe you. So as a result, if your team pushes back on it, you have to have really good reasons to be able to justify that to them. Or what it'll do is it'll become very demotivating. The next is corporate leaders. I hear a lot about this wanting to have reduced office space to save money, things along that line. You may be pressured already to move toward having your IT team work totally from home. permanently. And, that has implications too, both positive and negative. Also is that maybe you hired staff. You said, hey, we can hire people anywhere now. Maybe you're in Boston and hired someone in Dallas. And you know what? When everyone's back into the office, they don't want to move to Boston. Or also is that what you'll find is if you bring people back into the office, many companies are not doing that. And you will be at a recruiting disadvantage if you are forcing people to come into the office. But if they want to work at home, they will find other jobs around the country where they can. The opposite of that, obviously, is it could be to your advantage. Then if you say, gee, my people are going to work at home permanently, maybe there's 2 or 3 companies that you love to get people from in your industry, but maybe their offices are at distance, maybe they're down the street. So you want to have a great recruiting tool, that gives you an advantage over the other people in your other firms in your industry. If you're working home full time, give people the option. Yeah, you can come into the office when you want, but hey, you can work at home 100% if you'd like to. It'll help you get better people and retain them more easily. So, that's both a positive and negative based on which side of the coin you wish to be on. And then lastly on this, even if employees feel safe within your office space, and I don't mean safe like they're going to get beat up, of course. I mean safe that they're not going to get the coronavirus. So in other words, if they feel, that, okay, the desks have been moved so they're far enough apart, every night someone is coming through, spraying with disinfectant. So even if they feel that they will be totally safe and isolated away from this virus when they're physically in your office space, you know what? If your office, for example, is in a downtown, in a city, they may feel super uncomfortable having to take public transportation to get there. This list, this is just a handful of them. This goes on and on and on. Other issues that you'll have to contend with when you go to move people back into the office. So from here, what I'd like to do is I'd like to thank you for being with us for 45 minutes. I hope it's been of value to you. Oh, a question came up. Glad he brought up about coming back into the office challenges. That's something actually I'm doing more research on, and you'll see both through our our classes as well as. But just give me a call if you have some questions. But anyway, this is the first of these webinars we'll be doing through the year. They're all scheduled. Many of you I saw had signed up for multiple already. Our next one is on March 12th, and it's on effective communication in a virtual world. Also is that we have our resource library. Anyone who's taken our certification and such, you already have access to it. If not, we do have it's more limited information, but click on the membership tab on our site and you will be able to gain access to additional information. Also, let me remind you, as we said up front, if you're not familiar with it yet, we have our ITMLP. For those who've taken the ITMLP certification, we'd love to have you back for our for MLEs. If you click on the registration tab within our website, these two are scheduled one or the other per month through now and the end of 2021. So what I'd like to do is I just really like to thank you for spending 45 minutes or actually 48 minutes of your life with me. I truly hope that it's been of value to you. And if I can provide you any additional information or just a question on any of these items, I'm easy to find. My email is there. Give me a call, comes with the territory. With that, have a great day, have a great weekend, and be well.